Hello and welcome to African Voices Platform TV. My name is Tchiyiwe Chihana. Today we're joined by a leader whose work has been instrumental in championing culturally sensitive health and social care. David Bussue, who is the CEO of SACMHA Health and Social Care, has spent decades advocating for African and Caribbean communities, driving vital initiatives in mental health, community well-being, and systemic reform. Welcome to African Voices Platform.
Thank you.
It's lovely to have you here, and also the widespread of the work that you do that has been so impactful. But I wondered if we could start from the very beginning and talk about your personal journey into this work. Where did it start? What inspired you to enter the fields of social work, community care, and advocacy?
Okay, so my parents came from the Caribbean in the 50s during the Windrush generation, and my father was one of those in our communities. There were always those people, the go-to people for certain things, and as the community developed, he definitely had that role. And my mother was very similar for the women of the community, and so we grew up with a notion of service. Right. I can remember looking back with hindsight now, I can remember coming home and there were people at home, women with their children, and they'd come to stay. We just thought it was more children to play with, even though there were six of us. But actually looking back, it was actually women who were fleeing domestic abuse. Right. And my mother was a safe place for them to go to. Our home was a safe place for them to go to. Right. And so unsurprisingly, most of my family are either nurses or social workers. My mum was a nurse. And also we were a family of faith. We grew up in the Christian tradition, and of course there's notions of service there as well. And I think the Caribbean community at that time was an emerging community. We really only had each other. Yeah.
And we're talking about Sheffield. This is where your family was. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. I was born in Sheffield. I have my two eldest siblings were born in St Kitts, and came 2 years after my dad came. Right. My dad came first, and then there were 4 of us born here in the UK. Right. And so that notion of service, I think, we took it in with mother's milk. It was kind of in our DNA. And I liked the idea of social work, and I remember being at school. I went to Aberdale Grange School, which is a school that now no longer exists. And I remember hearing about social work, not really understanding what it was, but I knew that I wanted to work with children. I wanted to work in one of the helping professions. And it was in the days of streaming at school, and so there was top stream, middle stream, bottom stream. And there were 4 of us in the top stream. And even then, when I said to the careers teacher, Mr. Hooper, that I wanted to be a social worker, he laughed out loud in front of the whole class.
Where was that?
Right here in Sheffield, Aberdale Grange School, laughed out loud in front of the whole class. And so I decided I wasn't going to do that. I was going to do something completely differently. But then there was a woman there used to be a career service in the centre of Sheffield, and there's a woman who came from there, and she said, well, you can do something alternative, but with your grades, you can do something else. You can do social work. And she was very affirming. And then at my church at that time, there's a woman who's passed away, a woman called Yvonne Channer, who moved from London to Sheffield to do her social work training. And she told me about social work, and there was a course that was run at it's called Sheffield College now, but it used to be Shirecliffe College.
All right, okay.
And so there was a course that was around residential care, and I was keen to work with children, and so I did that course, and then got a job in a voluntary sector organisation in a children's home in the Totley area of Sheffield. Eventually that came to an end, and I took that opportunity to go to university and do my social work training. Right, okay. And I took a job.
Was the university the Sheffield ones or somewhere outside?
No, it was Sheffield.
So literally you're Sheffield everything.
I'm Sheffield born and bred. Apart from a very brief sojourn in London when I was doing doing my training. It was Sheffield Polytechnic. I'm very old.
Which is now Hallam, is that correct?
Sheffield Hallam, that's right.
Yeah, okay,
that's right. And so I did that then, and I got a 3-month contract as a social worker in Sheffield and left 38 years later, having risen through different jobs in there. And when I left Sheffield, I was Deputy Director for Children's Services with a focus on disabilities, and there was all kinds of things in my portfolio. With the council.
Okay,
yeah.
Great.
And then I went to work in Derbyshire for a while, and that's when I moved into adult services. And then took early retirement in 2016 because, as you've seen from, I'm also a pastor, so I wanted to do some more of that work. And my mum, she passed in 2021, but my mum had Alzheimer's, and so my sister and I were the two left in Sheffield. Everybody, all my siblings did their parts. Even my sister and my brother-in-law, who live in Florida, they would come at least once a year, probably for about 6 or 8 weeks, to give us a break. My brother, who lived in London, he would come for significant periods of time. So everybody contributed to their care. And so that was an opportunity that I took then. And I don't regret it. Social work has changed a lot in the intervening years, but it's a really good profession. And at the time I was doing my training, there really was a focus on it being inclusive, and people who came into academia from different routes were really encouraged.
Yeah. I wonder what were some of the challenges that you can say stand out for you throughout your career with all the changes you've seen? So what are some of the biggest ones?
I think that some of the challenges have been, and I think they're still the same today, that often being the only black person in the room, being the only person that understands about who's not at the table. I think things have moved on a lot since the 80s, 90s, when I was in frontline practice. Certainly the leadership of the partner agencies that we work with in health and in the council are much more attuned to the issues than they were 40 years ago. But we're not there yet. There's still a ways to go. But I think I sense with many people, not everybody because there's always exceptions, but with the people that we engage with, the SACMHA has a really good relationship with a lot of the statutory organisations and a lot of the voluntary sector partners. There's a real wish to be inclusive, and different to does not mean less than. And I think we really, so things have changed, but the challenges, I guess, are the same. They just morph into a different presentation as the decades change. Just when you think you've got to grips with racism and diversity, and it morphs into something else. Yeah.
So let's talk then about SACMHA in that context. What is, for those that do not know, what is the mission of SACMHA? When was it founded? What are the founding principles of it?
Well, SACMHA began life as Sheffield African Caribbean Mental Health Association. That's what the SACMHA stands for. And when it began in 1988, it was really agitation from 2 women in the community who had loved ones who were in the mental health system and who were not being served well by the mental health system. And at that same time, in most large conurbations where there was a significant, and it was a largely Caribbean community at that time, where we were present, this issue of mental health, particularly mental health as it impacted on black men, was really at the top of the agenda. And there was an organisation in London, which sadly isn't there anymore, the African Caribbean Mental Health Association, which was led by a really inspirational guy called Errol Francis. And he's still around. He does something he's more involved in the arts now and how arts can contribute to people's mental well-being. But he led that organisation. And so a couple of us went down there to see what they were doing and really learned from them. So they had a very much a holistic approach to care, wraparound care. So the services that SACMHA has, the range of services that we have, really reflect that. And I guess that's the ethos when you're asking about the values, the vision, the mission. It really is to be the go-to organisation, to have that wraparound support for people who are living with challenges. Of course, austerity hit, and we were hit really hard, as were a lot of black-led organisations in the city. When austerity hit in Sheffield, there were 13 African Caribbean organisations in the city, really doing work from cradle to the grave. By the time austerity began to end, there were two. There was SADACA and us.
And, oh God,
So I mean, and it was, some of it was cynical, some of it was very much about officers at the time not valuing black-led organisations, being suspicious of them. However, the pandemic hit, and it became clear to the new leadership that there were things that were happening, that they needed to get close to communities, communities that they had. Communities, we weren't hard to reach, we were overlooked.
We were overlooked,
And I remember at that time, my eldest daughter, her marriage had ended and she came back to Sheffield. She moved in with me with two of my grandchildren. At the heart of the
pandemic itself?
At the start of the pandemic.
At the start, okay.
And she moved in just for a couple of weeks, and then the lockdown
came.
So we were there for, I think she came in the March and was able to move on in September, I think it was, something like that. I can't remember now, but and it was lovely. It worked really well, actually. But I remember us watching the news one night and her saying, "Dad, there's a lot of black people dying from this COVID business," and that really led to a change of direction for SACMHA. So I volunteered with the organisation for many, many years.
Yeah. So the time you were going to London, that was you in a volunteer capacity.
That's right. That's right. In the 80s.
In the 80s.
But scroll forward to 2019, and I'd taken early retirement. I'd taken a year out just to regroup and refresh myself, really, and then got more into ministry. And this job came up at SACMHA, just a part-time.
So that was 2019 when you took time out, and the pandemic happened. So
2020.
Quite timely, though.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so I started at SACMHA in December 2019, and then the pandemic was, lockdown was March the 23rd.
Yes, it was.
So, and we took one decision that I think changed everything for the organisation. It was a small organisation. There were just myself, 3 part-time staff, and Voluntary Action Sheffield, when the pandemic hit, decided to pull together the voluntary sector organisations and statutory sector organisations, and to set up hubs to support the community during the pandemic. And you could be a hub for, locally, so focused in a particular area, or you could be a hub for a community. And so it was clear to me that our community wasn't as being actively considered as needed to be, so decided we'd be a hub for the Caribbean community and for the Black African community, and that's what we did. And that single decision really changed everything, because there were regular meetings every Thursday morning, which brought together
with
partners.
All the hubs.
Absolutely, with partners from the statutory sector, from the voluntary sector, all online. But what it meant was that we were in the conversation. Celia Jackson Chambers, who's our current chair of trustees, had led the organisation on a voluntary basis for a number of years. She'd taken retirement from the council. We'd got no money to pay her. And then the Tudor Trust invested in SACMHA, which is a grant-giving organisation in London. And it changed everything. We began to do work around the pandemic, around vaccine hesitancy, around health inequalities, around social inequalities, and became a trusted organisation. And so we grew and grew. We grew too fast.
Because of the pandemic, but it was needed.
Yeah, it was needed. It was needed.
Were you part of the BEMA COVID-19 action group as well? Because I know that also just emerged at the time. No,
we weren't.
I see. Right. So what gaps was SACMHA looking to fill, and what does that translate into work-wise now?
Okay. So it was very much around. We are an African Caribbean-led organisation. We celebrate our African heritage, but we also celebrate our Caribbean heritage, and are very celebratory about that. I know there are some tensions in our community about, the impact of slavery and the move from Africa to the Caribbean and all the rest of it, but it's my view, it's our view, you can't ignore 400 years of heritage in a particular place. And I love the Caribbean. It's a beautiful place. I don't know if you've ever been, but
I've not been, but I have a lot of friends from the Caribbean.
I recommend St. Kitts.
I'll go to St. Kitts and speak some Francais.
And so it really was from the beginning, and I guess it was part of my employment history, that it was very clear it was great to be on the receiving end of bits of investment, but we needed to be at the table where decisions were being made, strategic decisions were being made, commissioning decisions were being made, decisions that were being made that impacted on our community. And Sheffield has, particularly the Caribbean community, it's a bit different from some of the cities like Leeds and Nottingham, in the sense that we are, when I was growing up in Sheffield, there were 3 or 4 areas of the city where you would go and you would find the Caribbean community.
Right. Which ones?
Broome Hall, Nether Edge, Pittsmore, around Mearsbrook. You would find us. They were the main areas.
Okay.
Now we are very geographically dispersed. We are an ageing population, in line with many other populations, but we also have a low birth rate, which is unlike some other communities of colour. And so if the commissioners, if the people in the statutory sector continue to focus on a place-based approach, locality working, neighbourhood working, which are good things, but if they slavishly follow that localism model, it excludes people from our community.
Because they're quite dispersed.
Very dispersed. So if you're hoping to find someone who looks like you or understands you, and we slavishly follow this localism model, they'll struggle. And so we've been really pushing that, yes, localism has its place, but we also need to focus on communities of interest and communities of identity. And if I just give you a quick example, so my mum was diagnosed with Alzheimer's in 2012. She was a nurse by training. She'd been very involved in community work. She was on the board of Health Watch. She did all sorts. And when she developed Alzheimer's, we took her to one of the dementia-friendly, I think it was an Age UK or an Age Concern place in Norfolk Park. Nothing wrong with it. People were very kind. My mum enjoyed going, but she was the only black person there. There were no other black service users, there's no other staff. And my mum it wasn't unusual for her to be in that position.
But there's some nuances, I think.
Absolutely. And so I'll never forget, it was during the time of remembrance. And they'd done something on the war and all the rest of it. But it was all Vera Lynn and the White Cliffs of Dover. But if they'd have spoken to my mum, my uncle came and was in the RAF in the 40s. He was here before Windrush. He had a career we could have done something a bit more creative, a bit more inclusive. We could have talked about the West India Regiment and all those kinds of things. And it just highlighted for me the importance of, absolutely, have services local to people, but don't forget issues around communities' interest and identity, because some people are not going to get their needs met if we just slavishly follow that one model.
Right, and how does that translate then in the daily work of SACMHA?
It translates in the sense that we have a range of services. Some of them we've developed for ourselves, some of them are in partnership with other organisations. So in terms of advocacy, we're one of the delivery partners on the advocacy service. That's statutory advocacy on wards, in mental health wards, in domiciliary care. And that's a partnership that is led by Citizens Advice Sheffield. And then we're one of the delivery partners. Disability Sheffield is another one, and Cloverleaf Advocacy is another service. Each Monday we have the Sheffield Memory Hub, which is aimed at people living with memory loss and their carers, and that's a partnership with Carl Case and Cultural Appropriate Resources and a range of volunteers. we have a peer support service which is funded by the ICB through the Integrated Care Board, through the Synergy Partnership. So we coordinate for the north of the city. It's very much around partnership. In fact, most of our services come out collaboratively.
Yeah.
We have a project around black. We call it the Black Barbers Project, but it's more than that. There's a podcast. It works with barbers around them being an early intervention space for black men who are having difficulties with mental health. Is that with McCall,
or is that something different?
We do work with McCall.
I love that work.
Yeah, absolutely. We did a big session at the university with McCall around this. I've got so much respect for that young man.
I know. He gives us hope for what the future looks like.
I knew his grandparent.
Oh wow!
So Keith and I know each other very well.
Oh great!
So we do a lot of work around prostate cancer.
Right.
The data tells us that 1 in 4 black men will be diagnosed with prostate cancer, as opposed to 1 in 8 white men. 1 in 8 black men will die from prostate cancer, as opposed to 1 in 12 white men. And so all that work, that information, that gathering together, we do a lot of work around black elders, supporting black elders to get good, culturally competent care at home. We have a big service around managing people's personal budgets for them and providing personal assistance for them at home.
Oh, good.
We deliver almost 900 hours of care a week on that service alone, through the PAs that we oversee and manage. And so we try to have this entire wraparound service. And of course there's the housing support, which is a big part of what we do. And that was it was developed in a way that is unlike the usual supported living schemes.
How does it look then?
Well, first of all, it's not for the usual 18 months, 2 years that people move into supported living. Their tenancy can be for life, or as long as their needs are met by that tenancy. It's an intergenerational site. So our youngest tenant is 20, our oldest tenant is 89. On the ground floor we have services for black elders, and on the first floor they have people living with a mental health diagnosis. And so Thursday is our social cafe, which is a posh name for a lunch club really, but we have lots of stuff going on there. People come in and share information. Western Park Cancer Charity comes once every 3 weeks and has the big purple bus on site to talk about cancer. They have exercise classes and all kinds of things going on, singing for health. And a nice sunny day, there'll be tables outside, everybody will be outside, and there's a real community atmosphere. I wanted to build a community, not just sometimes supported living can be a bit ghetto-ish, in the sense that there's lots of supported living schemes together. Everybody knows, oh, you're from that place. We didn't want that for the service.
So what are the needs that people would have in order to access that supported living in your case?
So for the black elders, it would be 55 plus with additional needs. So memory loss might be an issue, health issues might be a reason for a referral. For the mental health service, it would be 18 plus, and with a mental health need. Some of those, there's a couple of people that have had undiagnosed neurodivergent issues, but also some mental health laid over that as well. And anybody basically who's eligible to have their care and support funded through housing benefit.
Do they come through referral system, or do they come directly to you?
Both. So most of the mental health services, most of the people in the mental health flats are, some came straight from hospital. It's not a commissioned service in the sense that Sheffield Health and Social Care have set the service up. We developed this with Archers Housing Association, who they're just fantastic partners. There's a real meeting of minds in terms of values and ethos and vision.
And they've been around almost as long as you have, haven't they?
They have.
Yeah.
And so we generate the people to come in, and social media is our friend in this regard.
It's working, right?
It's working. It's working.
It's working.
Yeah.
I wondered, how many do you currently have in the accommodation?
Right. So there's 4 ground floor flats for black elders, and 8 flats for the people who are living with a mental health difficulty. We do have a waiting list, and we are in conversations about what the next supported living scheme will be. We're just coming into our 3rd year of of having that service up and running, but I'm really conscious that part of the success of Breinberg Court is the other services that are happening there. So people can come out of their property on a Monday, on a Wednesday, on a Thursday, and there's something going on. They don't have to be a part of it, but they can be. The last Friday of the month we have Man Talk, which is a group for black men talking. Around 10 or 12 black guys get together every month, have some food.
And they come from anywhere.
Come from absolutely anywhere.
Yeah.
And so we've talked with Archers, and they're as keen as us to think about, okay, what does the next development look like, and how do we make it financially viable so that there are those wraparound services that are either on site or easily accessible because they're near to the site.
Yeah.
So we're having those conversations, and we've not rushed at getting the next supported living scheme. We are in conversations with the Trust around more intensive supported living, but that would be away from Breinberg.
Something else you told me earlier before we came on for this. You talked about being you manage the property for Archers. What does that mean, and how does that look?
Okay, so Archers own the land. And we are the managing agent, so we're responsible for the referrals into the service, the maintenance of the service. Some the landlord still takes responsibility for. We're responsible for all the support for the people who live there. We're responsible, so we provide some white goods for people to come in, and we're responsible for the maintenance and refurbishment of those. We're responsible for making sure that health and safety is met, and then we have some. Obviously, Archers have some reporting to do to the housing agencies, and we provide the monitoring. But I guess it's, if you were thinking about it in ordinary terms, they're the landlord and we're the tenant, and it works really well.
Are there other tenants as well apart from SACMHA within the property?
No, SACMHA, we have the whole site.
You have the whole site, right? The other thing that caught my attention as you were explaining what work you're doing is I want to go back to the prostate cancer awareness, and how is that going? I think maybe just over a year ago you had a big conference around it that we actually televised on African Voices. Right. Yes. What strides have been made? What's the direction looking like now?
It's going very, very well, and I think that links into the positive relationship we have with the university and the focus that we have on research. We are very, very involved with research, and Shirley Samuels, who leads our research and engagement team, is, we've developed a really positive relationship with the university, and that's come over time. Yeah. It's built up over time. We've built trust. There's been key people like Caroline Mitchell and Kate Fryer and Josie Reynolds and others, Joanna White, and we've developed that relationship where we trust each other, we challenge each other, we have some tough conversations, but the university has really invested in the relationship. Those staff have been critical, and we've had to take some risks because the community, our community, has been quite sceptical of research. So the prostate cancer group came out of a research project that we did around prostate cancer, around information, and it's going very well. It's a peer support group, so there are some men there who've been diagnosed for a long time. There are other men that are joining the group or getting involved with the group who have just been diagnosed. Sadly, we lost one of the pioneer members of the group, Mr. Lewin. He passed away a couple of weeks ago. The group has supported or is supporting an emerging group in Leeds. It was a surprise to me that the group in Sheffield was the first black men's peer support group around prostate cancer in the north.
Oh, great.
I thought there had been others elsewhere, Nottingham or wherever, but there wasn't. We're working on another big research project at the moment around prostate cancer, and there's another piece of research that's coming out that we are part of, that Caroline Mitchell is leading.
Caroline Mitchell is with the university?
That's right,
okay,
yeah.
Right.
I should give her a Professor Caroline.
Professor
give her a proper
Caroline
title.
Mitchell, yeah.
And so we're having a real impact in terms of the conversations about prostate cancer, whilst at the same time continuing to support men who are living with prostate cancer,
Right.
providing information about how they can live well with prostate cancer, having conversations about making sure you get yourself checked. I think, you know, everybody thinks if you go to your doctor and talk about prostate cancer, it's going to end with a finger in your backside. It doesn't always end that way. There are lots of information and peer support type approaches.
Yeah.
And the model we tend to use is that we'll host events in places where our community feels comfortable.
Okay, right.
But we'll have the specialists as well who will come and share their specialist knowledge.
Yeah.
And there's always the scope for asking questions and learning. We're very blessed on our board of trustees to have Dr. Lisa Phillip, who's a GP in the northwest of the city, and we have Dr. Steph Ejejimema, who's an academic.
Right.
So they contribute. We have
Stephanie, yeah. Oh, good. I didn't realize Steph was in that. Good. Yeah.
Celia's a very experienced manager.
Yeah.
Karen is a current manager in the local, senior manager in local authority. Melva has a background in HR. Clinton is a very active community activist.
Yes, yeah.
So we've got a breadth of
you've
people
got-
around the board of
yeah.
trustees that are committed to the organisation, are there for the long haul,
Yeah.
but help us formulate. So when you ask me questions about what the impact is,
It's-
they're asking me those same questions. You can have organisations that are there and they exist, but surely if you're going to be there and you're going to be an anchor organisation, there's got to be some evidenced impact of the work that we're doing.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's so much around trust as well. I
Yes,
think trust
yes,
in order for
yeah.
people to come forward and for men to be confident about going to get tested as
Yes,
well, I think.
yeah,
So
yeah,
that's quite an important piece of work.
I think that trust issue is the same in regard to mental health. You know, we have one of we have an equity, his title is Equity Officer, Race and Mental Health, a guy called Gambinga, and that work with the trust grew out of a time of trust building, having a conversation about black men being overrepresented in seclusion and in restrictive practice on wards and all of this stuff, and how do we make a difference? And the trust having the humility to come and say to us, we know we need to do something, we've got some money, but we don't quite know what to do. And we spent some time having that conversation about what that might look like. And I just saw some data around restrictive practice. And before we got before we got involved, you know, there'd be between 40 and 65 incidences of restrictive practice on wards. Not all black people, but the majority were.
The majority.
February this year, there were none. None.
Wow.
And now Gambinga and the team at Tallinn, who's the human rights officer, Caroline Johnson, who's the executive, everybody's working towards, okay, how do we have these conversations now with communities around understanding mental health, understanding restrictive practice in mental health. And it is, the foundation to all of that is trust.
Absolutely, it absolutely is, and so important. Yeah, so important. I wanted to speak a bit more about mental health and community well-being, but the SpeakUp report that you led on that explored African Caribbean perspectives on home care, what were some of the key findings and why was it such an important piece of work?
Some of the key findings were not a surprise in the sense that our community was not being well served by care at home, that and the way we did it, that we had focus groups, and bearing in mind this was during the pandemic, so we had focus groups of people who were receiving care, focus groups of carers and their carers, focus groups of the professionals, black professionals working in the system, and then we brought them together, and one of the questions was, what does good look like for you? And that work came out of a commission that Health Watch Sheffield had, and then they gave us one of the SpeakUp grants to help contribute to their overall report. And it was around services not being culturally competent, services not being trusted or accessible. One of the most challenging stories that I heard during that time that came out of that research was that there was a Jamaican man who had got a number of health issues, was being supported by a care agency, and the family discovered that when the carers visited, they never spoke to him. Now imagine that you are reliant on these people for food and for water. These people are stripping you naked, washing you, doing the most intimate things to you, and they don't speak to you. And when they were challenged, they said, oh, well, he's got a strong accent. Well, guess what? When we came here, people had lots of strong accents. We had to learn to function with Geordie accents and Liverpudlian accents and Yorkshire accents, and we did. I couldn't believe it.
No, that is no excuse.
And sharing some of those stories with the professionals in the system. Thankfully, it was a shock to them too. And I think some of the impact of that report, which has led to the council funding a Black Elders manager that's based with SACMHA, to do some work around support for Black Elders, to be a critical friend but a productive partner around this whole issue of Black Elders. That's some of the impact of that research project. We are now embedded in terms of the strategic groups of the organisation. We are on the board of the Adult Social Care Service in the city, which is a multidisciplinary board. There's an operational board being created, which the Black Elders manager Marva Gray will be a part of. We partner very closely with Health Watch around this kind of work. Bit of tension now because there's some conversations about the government having decided to close Health Watch as an option nationally, but we are making an impact again directly in the way that services are delivered and people experience services.
How do you monitor that? It feels like, how do you monitor?
That's a really good question. We monitor it because, in part, I guess there's three strands. In part because we're trusted as an organisation, and so when people have had a negative experience, they now know they can come to us, share that negative experience, and we've got pathways to get that resolved. The advocacy service that we have, many people don't know that you can have an advocate to support you to make a complaint in terms of your treatment in the NHS and other bits of social care. And we visit. We visit people at home. I visited somebody this week, and the carers arrived when they were there. They didn't know who I was. They were fantastic. Okay,
so you're like a mystery.
Absolutely, like a mystery shopper.
And
we have the system where we feed that back into the council, and it was really good because talking to the daughter of the guy who had visited she said that the two people who arrived, and these were two young white people, a young white guy and a young white woman. He said we call them the dream team. And just hearing them engage with this 97-year-old Jamaican man, the way they engaged with him, the way they supported him, of course you have to be culturally competent, but first of all you've got to be human.
Absolutely.
They were just, it was just good to see, and we see it much more now.
You're seeing that change. Okay, that's really good. And I'm thinking that people.
Sorry, we also have the situations where somebody got in touch with us, and the carer had done all the personal care with this woman with a bowl, and was about to brush this woman's teeth and put the toothbrush in the water that she's just washed this woman's body with, just as the daughter walked in. we're not there yet.
So we still, oh my goodness.
We've got a ways to go, but at least we are increasing your position.
And
so
you
we can
have to
influence.
wonder what the occurrences are when there's nobody watching.
Precisely.
That's
Precisely.
not, but I'm sure there are people watching this and thinking, I have seen that, or my relative experiencing this. How do they access you and your support? How do they report to you, maybe? Yeah.
We have a website. We're very active on social media, so we have a very active Facebook page. We are on Brian Burke Court. Tell us, phone us, email us. admin@sacma.org.uk.
Yeah.
Get in touch with us. We want to know, because we won't change anything if we don't know.
If we don't know, absolutely, that's really useful. You also helped lead the Addressing Black Male Suicide Conference. Can you talk about this a bit more, why the focus is so vital today?
There's around 7,000 or so people who end their life by suicide each year. The numbers fluctuate a bit, but it's around that high 600s number. Of that, 75% are men. And we really got interested in this issue of suicide. As you know, I'm also a pastor.
Yeah.
I serve as associate pastor at the Church of God of Prophecy on Duke Street in Sheffield. And in a short space of time, I officiated at the service of 6 people who'd ended their life by suicide. The youngest was 16, 5 were men, and 1 was a woman in her 30s. And we've all had our own issues with low mood, and to the point of suicide being an option.
Yeah.
What we couldn't find out was how many of those were black people, because when somebody ends their life by suicide, there's no requirement for them to record ethnicity. So the coroner's office doesn't keep any record of the ethnicity of people who have ended their life by suicide.
Does the death certificate say death by suicide, or does it say
rarely, very rarely.
Right.
So we are part of the suicide network in Sheffield that's led by Public Health.
Okay.
And there's a reporting mechanism for everybody who ends their life by suicide, and we contribute to that.
Yeah.
But we wanted to have this conference, and this was funded in part through the work that we did with Sheffield Health and Social Care Trust, because anecdotally there was an issue about black men and their mental well-being and leading to suicide, but we couldn't come up with the data.
No.
And we still can't, and we're still plugging away to get better ethnic monitoring in a range of health settings, but for the coroner's office to see that there's an importance in recording people's ethnicity as they end their lives by suicide. And so we had this conference, and we were very blessed at the conference to have a member of our staff who had, it wasn't just suicidal ideation, he very clearly planned his suicide, but didn't follow through, and now has a real zest for life, and is one of our most effective members of staff. Well, I shouldn't say that, because it's a fantastic staff team at SACMHA. There's no dead weight, if you like. They're just brilliant. All of them are brilliant. I'm really pleased to be able to lead that organisation.
Absolutely, yeah.
We also had the sister of someone who had ended his life by suicide, and we had somebody who was a counsellor, and particularly had an interest with around suicide, and then we had somebody who was also a counsellor but had been a senior leader in one of the black majority churches, and so we had the faith aspect as well, kind of the final taboo around suicide. What happens if you end your life by suicide?
Actually, because I'm looking at time, that's the part that I was going to come to as a closing question. So you're both a community leader, but also an ordained minister. How does your personal faith and philosophy shape the way you approach your work?
I'm on a bit of a journey with that because I think that the church, I'm a strong person of faith. I'm very active in my church locally. I'm on the board of trustees for the church nationally. But I think the church has abdicated its responsibility in challenging some of these issues of inclusion, the rise of Farage and reform, all of these things. The church has been far too silent.
Right.
And I think that the benefit that I have in straddling both the role as Chief Executive at SACMHA and as part of the pastoral team at Duke Street allows me an access that perhaps others don't have. And so I'm challenging my church, challenging not just my church, Christianity, if you like, to be, not to lose its social foot. Jesus was social, a guy of social action. We've developed a really good relationship with Sheffield Cathedral, who are really trying hard to be more socially aware. And so I think, in answer to your question, it gives me an access, it gives me a way of working that I benefit from being in those two positions. Okay. It's hard to manage time sometimes because switching off is hard. Yeah. But it's a privilege to do both.
But you show up in both ways as
yes,
as
absolutely,
needed.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, thank you so very much for all the amazing work you're doing, whether as a minister or CEO of SACMHA. We look forward to hosting you again.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. And that's David Bussue from SACMHA, speaking on mental health and other community challenges that the organization is working on. My name is Tchiyiwe Chihana. Thank you so much for joining us.